And it's like, okay, so that's, that's just the prevailing theme that it seems like it is. And that's kind of how I felt during this process of going through. I would not change it. Having run, I would do it again, but it is just part of our reality. So it's a little tiresome at best.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And actually, if you don't mind, I would love to pull Lupe in for a quick second and get her thoughts on the film. If you don't mind, Lupe.
I'm sorry, but I can't.
Or the topic, at least. I'm sorry.
But I did see, I'm not sure, I did see the one, another one that was, let me show you why I'm late. I've been working a lot, so.
Oh, you're fine. So yeah, the movie this evening was covering basically getting more women of color elected. So they followed women all over the country, and kind of.
I remember that. I remember Victoria Esquivel in El Paso was one of them.
That's right.
I didn't see the whole thing, but I'd love to share on that. I'm one of those that believes what goes around comes around, and as a Hispanic migrant worker, I saw a lot of the same things growing up. But as you've noticed, in Dallas and Houston, the majority of the judges are Black females. And even in Texas, and you suffered quite a bit. But I don't believe that nobody's watching. I believe that as we suffer, people see that. And what goes around comes around. We are going to be triumphant in one way or another. I'm thrilled that a lot of the judges in Houston and Dallas are women of color. And if you look at the 5 happiest countries in the world, over 50% of their legislators are women. I don't think that there's no connection there. I think there's a reason why the 5 happiest countries in the world are governed by half of the population. And I honestly believe that as we bring more women into politics, that we're going to get better. 4 years ago, the cry was, let's get Medicaid in Texas. Let's get Medicare in Texas. This last election, at least around Dallas, almost all the Republicans who were running were saying, well, I'm changing my mind. I think we should have it now. Let's see what happens. And now the needs are again, the things that women bring to the table. I remember in several of Trump's elections, in several of his speeches, at several points he would say, why don't suburban women like me? And I'm one of this who was sitting here going, oh, me here, I'll tell you, let me tell you why they don't like you. Because they're intelligent and they have common sense. And as we get this out to the rest of the world, the women get this out to the rest of the world, I honestly believe that we're going to see a better change in Texas and in the US.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point that you made about the top 5 countries that are, have, women in leadership, with the majority, and how effective, they are and how successful they are. One of the parts that really, really struck me was the young woman running for commissioner. I served as a commissioner here in the city of Plano. I'm not a county commissioner, a city commissioner. And at the time, they were unaware of anyone that was ever as young as me to have ever served. And I was in my late 20s. And by the time that I finished my term, I left as chairperson, and they couldn't recall the last time they had ever had a woman chairing that particular board. So I think, and that's one of my passions, that we've got to get more women into these positions. It's critically important, and we've got to keep going up. We can't go backwards. We've got to be progressing. So
I might add that those 5 countries have affordable housing, affordable education, and affordable healthcare. And this tells you where the need of the family is, and the women bring the need of the family. So I'm done. I can talk. I can get going quite a bit, but I'm done. Thank you.
oh, excellent points. Thank you so much. So Nancy, I would love to bring you now into the conversation and talk about, I know that Delia had mentioned this particular quote that had stood out to her, the one that Bushra said, "We don't have to be victimized first to run for office." What was a moment or something that somebody said in the movie that just really stood out and resonated with you?
There were so many moments. Even during the intro, my eyes were tearing up. So for me, I was jotting notes on the side, dropping some in the chat. I think it's important that an overall theme that I saw throughout was authenticity over assimilation. Each one of those women from different minority groups came as themselves. And I thought that was important. And I made the comment about putting on a darker lipstick, because if your focus is more on my makeup than it is on my words and my heart and my intention for the community, then how can we have that dialogue if your focus is off? I shouldn't have to suppress who I am for you to hear that I care or see that I care. So I thought that was good, because there's so much pressure for assimilation for people in minority groups, whether it's on work, it's in the community. When you show up as your authentic self, you have to stand in that. And I thought that was a theme throughout. Another thing, we don't have to be victimized to be leaders. When the woman was shown in Florida, whose son was shot in a car, I instantly thought about someone's son who recently died here in Plano in custody.
Yes.
And so my thoughts go to, goodness, same age range, same, of my family members. And I can't, it only takes a small incident for it to end up being a funeral a few days later.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very heartbreaking for me. And again, we don't have to be victimized first. That's what helped push her journey. But that shouldn't be the cause for us to stand up for what we need in our communities.
Yes, and just to, I want to, note the person that she's talking about is Marvin Scott III, who died in Collin County custody recently. So yeah, that definitely, that moment definitely struck me. There were a lot of moments where I had to look away because I was, crying. That was really difficult. I think that really speaks a lot to, people who weren't necessarily born called right into politics or advocacy, right? But something happening, right? That forces them into it because they understand that they no longer have a choice because they can't be silent anymore, And I think that really, I think that was one of the moments I think that surprised me. That stands out to me. Were there any moments that surprised you reflecting on what you saw this evening?
I don't know about surprised, but when they talked about people are always willing to accept Black women in all kinds of roles, but then when you strive for leadership, there's a problem with accepting that person as a candidate. You know, that it's not, it's again, it's all of it is like just, it's pretty much, you know, how I felt about the entire process of going through running for commissioner. I ran for commissioner, you know, as a Democrat. And and it's not just men, it's because we're all conditioned. You know, we're conditioned to challenge other women more so than we would men. So and then you find you have, you know, we live in a racist, sexist world that we are all conditioned in and actively participating in. So, you know, I found that it was hard building up support. And somebody would, and eventually we did, and we did very well, but the drudging through all of that, you know, it's very emotional, because I'm like, somebody with my resume as a white male should already have been running for governor, you know, but
Yes.
You want to tell me, you know, I have, it's always an attack on legitimacy. You're not a legitimate candidate, you know, and I still kind of get that now running for mayor. But, you know, when you get your feet wet and you get in the race, it becomes different. You know, you know, they don't want to go there. So it's like when I was in not high school, college, I put this poster on my wall, and I should have known then I was probably foreshadowing my entire life. And it was a picture of Albert Einstein with the crazy hair. And it said, "Great spirits have often encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds," right? And I'm like, I just love that quote. And I put that up. And then I remember I was working for legal aid once, and I made that my signature line. One of the managers actually challenged me on it. It was like, "Who are you calling mediocre?" You know, I'm like, well, that's just ridiculous. But as running for office as a Black woman, I'm finding, and I'm insulted at one of the comments they made in the movie of the limited imagination and the small minds of people who are in office, who have the audacity to challenge whether or not I can be a legitimate candidate. And of course, those are mostly, you know, white males. They walk in and already get that deference. I get that a lot as a lawyer, you know, as a Black female. I don't have the luxury of walking into the courtroom unprepared. And I see white males consistently able to have the deference. And so, and a lot of problems that I come across is because as a Black woman who, you know, we've always had to work. We talk about slave, we always look at the man, but the woman was a slave as well, having to deal with many things, giving birth in the field and then going back and picking cotton. Okay, so it's a hard life. We were conditioned to be strong. And so a lot of problems I have is that I don't give anybody deference. I'm nice to everyone, but I don't give white males deference because of their white maleness. And so as a candidate, you know, and a Black woman, it just puts me in a different spot where I'm having to deal with so many issues that have nothing to do with whether or not I am actually the most competent and appropriate person for that position, which I am. So it's, you know, a lot of it was touching on point and just very much reminiscent of what I had just simply went through. And now, you know, I'm running for mayor, and I don't have any regrets. We did great. You know, it becomes a tribal warfare, and there was more of them, but we got more votes than anybody in our district before, and it excited a base, and we're moving forward. So it's, you know, those women in the movie or the screen that we just had, you have to know you are going to move forward and you're moving for a bigger cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I have a question then, and I'll encourage others, if you have a question, please go ahead and type it in the chat. So, and this may be kind of redundant then, but I mean, and this is for everybody, but I mean, do you think then that women have to jump through more hoops then? And then particularly to that point, women of color have to jump through more hoops?
Well, of course, I think women know that we do have to jump through more hoops. And as we're running for office, we certainly, you know, another thing they mentioned in the movie is we don't have the funding, you know, and those pockets that have the funding, we have to go through all kinds of loops to get them to see us as the legitimate candidate. because they're happy to see us as all kinds of things, but the legitimate candidate or the leader that might become the leader of their space, well, then now you've gone too far. And so, yeah, we have to go through all kinds. We certainly have a fundraising issue. It's always a bottom line fundraising. That's probably the first problem that we have to overcome. Women in general, particularly Black women, it's a problematic raising funds to run for office. And it makes it so that you have to be, I'm a lawyer. That's the only reason why I can run for office. I have the luxury to do a lot of things. It shouldn't be that way, but it's all good, because you have to be motivated and move forward. When I get in front of you, you will give me your money. So it's not, but it's a matter of getting those doors open and even getting an invite to those spaces, but the first thing they tell you is create a list of all the people I don't know nobody. Everybody knows broke, right? So I'm starting off with a negative network in terms of money and space. So that's how you start running for office. You write down, who do you know? And so then, so it's not, you can't say it's just not just a woman or a woman of color. It could be poor people, but it tends to be our problem. I'm writing down everybody I know. I don't know any millionaires. Some people actually do. So we do have to jump through hoops. Everybody jumps through hoops running for office, but yeah, our hoops are quite deep and wide.
Yeah. And Nancy or Lupe, would you have anything to add to that?
I think that in our process, another thing that I was thinking about was when you're putting in all of the work and the effort and the time, and it's packaged in this phrase in a cute way of Black girl magic. But every time I hear people say that, I think Black girl intention, Black girl consistency, Black girl resilience, Black girl tenacity, because there's so much more involved in serving in the community. When the one woman said in the film, you stop organizing, you start losing. That's what resonated with me. Earlier today, I reminded everyone, hey, Barack Obama was a community organizer. It starts somewhere. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's a matter of getting out there, getting to meet people, block walking, talking, going to different meetings, stepping out and being the only. As a minority, a lot of times you'll go into the room and be the only. I'm not the representative for all Black women in America, but I'm the representative for Nancy Wallace and the Wallace household. And I can speak the truth of my family and what we need and what our concerns are. And when I'm looking at candidates, I want to know, do they care about what I need?
Right.
When we're looking at what's best for our families, and when you think about running as a woman with children, the childcare aspect, and now with social media, the invasiveness, the proliferation within your family, the exposure, what are you willing to do? And another comment that was made in Georgia, they would never let you do it. They, that proverbial they, you need to define your fears so that you can face them. Who's the they in your life that's keeping you from taking that next step in the journey? So controlling your own narrative and defeating the fear with your truth.
That's excellent.
And I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go, absolutely.
I don't want to step on you. I'm sorry. We were discussing fundraising. I honestly think that women have a harder time fundraising. I'm excited to see all of the women groups. There's no great millionaires in those, but they do help. I was fortunate in that there were several women's groups that endorsed me, and then there was funds behind those. it was almost uncomfortable behind the groups that endorse you and never gave you a penny. It's like, you know, I need your endorsement. Thank you so much, but I need something to push me. And I really appreciate the endorsements, but it helps when there's even $50 behind it. You know, every penny helps. But the neat thing, and I always have to come back to something positive. The neat thing is that women are more capable of handling funds. I remember in the 2 races that I ran for sheriff and for governor, I was out fund every single time. And I used to, one of my campaigns used to joke that, you remember the old buffalo nickel? It had a buffalo in the back, and I think it was George Washington in the front. And they would joke and say, pardon the expression, they would joke and say that Lupe squeezes every nickel so hard that the buffalo shits, you know, because I would make so much as to where that money was spent and how it was spent. I honestly think that I reached almost as many people as the governor did with my $1 million compared to his 57 million. And but I will admit, we had 5 cities a day, 5 cities or town a day, which he never did. And I think that's what stretched our funds. I think with us, it's more, you gotta get out there. I used to say, and I still say to candidates, every hand you shake is a possible vote, but if you don't shake it, you're not gonna get it. Or meet it face to face or smile at it. You have to get out there. As we saw in Texas on the last election, they outdoor knocked us by a long shot because we were being extremely cautious, which is not a bad thing. But they beat us pretty badly because they were out knocking on doors and they were meeting people face to face. And we need to get out there and do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of really important municipal elections and races going on right now. So everybody should be doing everything they can to help and assist in those. Of course, voting, of course, but, you know, block walking if you can, supporting candidates financially if you're able to, and supporting them in their campaigns if you're able to. I think it's a really interesting point that Lupe made, how effective her dollars were compared to the other candidate. And, you know, I hear this time and time again, right? How much further a Dem dollar goes. So, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, you know, if it's a female Democrat, you know, there's got to be something to that. I mean, we're just really maximizing those dollars. And I think that that's just really incredibly interesting. I really do, you know.
Well, I don't want to leave it on such a downer. The movie, you know, did bring out a lot of emotions, but I'm going to say this. Our campaign was dynamic and phenomenal, and we put them on their toes. It became a tribal warfare when it became red and blue, not so much just black woman. In fact, I was running against a black female Republican. So, you know, it became tribal. We ended up getting more votes than Beto in our district, and we excited the base, and we scared the shit out of them, if I can say that to adults. Yeah. We scared them to death because we were moving forward. We were powerful. And if it wasn't a tribal warfare and you looked up candidates, you're going to vote for me because I was the best candidate on the ballot. I'm not being egotistical. It's just the way it is. And you really got to think highly of what you're doing if you're going to run in this event. The positive thing I want to tell you is we're making a difference. I remember Dallas when there was nothing but white male judges. I went to SMU. I remember that reality. And now it's completely different. I'm in Denton County. Obviously it wasn't a black female issue per se, because I was running against a black female. There's a whole lot of dynamics behind that. We call her Jesus. You can't beat Jesus. But we're moving forward in Denton County, and we're knocking those walls down, and they know They know Delia Parker Mims is the Democrat, and I got my middle finger up when it comes to Republicans, and they know that they better have their stuff together because we're coming after them. We are not afraid. They will come after you, but you got to be stuck. You got to be tough and move forward and know that this is what you were meant to do, because it's not fun, but it is. My children are old enough. You know, you have to get to a point where you can do that, and that just is a factor of being female, not necessarily black or white or of any color. My children are old enough, and it just came to a point where it's time to move forward and transfer what I have been doing, working in the community. Now, you mentioned Obama, or Nancy mentioned Obama was a community organizer. Part of those kinds of things are things that they just don't value. And then they'll say, you don't have experience. That's crap. I will serve over sitting any day of the week. I've sat in leadership positions, and you can look up anything that I've done. I've been president of county boards, but what I am proud of is the service that I have done in the community. And that is a lot of what we do as women, because when we move forward in a community in a way, and particularly Black women. When we move forward and make decisions, even if you're set up and you can just be a Republican for whatever crazy reason, you're still looking at issues from a community point of view. That's why Black women are 98% voting Democratic, regardless of what happens. We don't have to be educated. We have voted that along that line without the education, and supported and have flipped and have helped and have been the backbone of many elections and races, because we look at things from a community point of view, regardless of how you are individually. So I don't want to leave it with a negative thing. I'm excited. And when people underestimate me, and they do that all the time, the lady on the show was like, I was a debater as well. And my partner was from Spain, and it was the Black girl and the Spanish guy with the accent that would walk in and they would immediately think whatever. And I love it when you underestimate me, because that just allows me to show what I can do, and I win all the time. And I don't care what the results of the election are. They're scared, and they will always be scared when I put my name on the ballot. So it's not a negative thing. It is what it is. We've had that burden to bear, and if we're gonna make a change, we just have to be ready to walk that walk. Okay, because they're gonna come after you. They will. They come after me, and like I tell my supporters, I've proven that I'm tough enough to take it. I need you to prove that Democrats work hard enough to win. So it's a two-way street when I talk with supporters and Democrats. If you want to flip, it's not just on me. It's a community thing. We got to move forward.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting point that you made, that they made in the movie as well, that right when we lift up, women of color, and we get them elected into positions, we're protecting, right, the rights of everyone, and I think that really is monumental, and that's something that we can't forget. We're really protecting and instilling a lot of rights that we should have.
Yeah,
definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very powerful discussion, I must say, this evening. It's really incredible. Incredible. And I wanted to ask this question too. So was there anything or anyone in the film that you see reflected in your city or neighborhood? Nancy, would you like to take that question?
I think as I mentioned earlier, the women showing up authentically themselves, and growing up 70s, 80s, 90s, coming into my authenticity was very different, very different. So as I've lived in DeSoto, and now I also live in Plano, living in two polarizing areas within the same metroplex, what I see is a little different, I'm still very active with the different groups that I work with that help support the Southern Dallas region, the Southern area. I'm still new to this area up here in the North, but the intentionality that I have in promoting voting all the way down the ballot, making sure you touch those areas that touch your home, not just the top. Those are the things that no matter where I am, I look for. And I look for candidates that represent that to me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so my parents actually live in Georgia, and they live in Atlanta, and they live in and have lived in some of the counties that were really crucial in this last election. And fortunately, I was raised by very reasonable parents, so they voted the right way. But I was able to actually travel there and see them once this year, and it was before the election. And that had a really major impact on me. You know, it was really, really interesting, you know, obviously, you know, to see all of the political ads there and to, you know, bear witness to the climate, but just the energy and to see people excited in a different kind of way that they hadn't been before was amazing. And it was also amusing, right? Because, you know, we were in Texas and we thought we were going to have this huge role in flipping things. And, you know, how funny and how amazing was it that Georgia ended up being the one, you know? And so it was just amazing to me. And I really loved being able to, you know, have a firsthand, you know, account and witness to what was going on there. So it was really, you know, neat to see, obviously, too, Stacey Abrams in there. And I saw somebody mention in the chat that they have heard that, you know, Texas needs a Stacey Abrams. And they said to that point that, you know, no, what we need to do is we need to uplift our communities. They're already here. We just need to amplify them. And I thought that that was a really interesting and excellent point. You know, there are already lots of amazing, you know, women just like her that are already here, that are ready and already leading. They just need our help. They need people like us to lift their voices up, to support them, to get them elected. And then once they get elected, you know, they need to not forget, right, where they came from. And make sure that they educate, right, and lead the next generation of women who come and serve in, you know, office. That's, you know, critically important. And I think, you know, serving the community and not just, you know, showing up, right, to campaign is really important too. And I think, Delia, you're a, you know, excellent example of that. You really have to be authentic and walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah, I think Nancy was so correct in just saying the authenticity. That is the bottom line. And when I first came out of law school and I went and I talked to women lawyers and I wanted to find out what is their take on balancing being female, being in this practice. And someone said early on, don't just join organizations because you want a resume build. Be involved in things that are of interest to you, because then it is authentic and people can understand that. And I, you know, I've always kept that. And they also said, you can give people your mind, but not your stomach, meaning don't let anybody cause you to have an ulcer. You know, you have to cut it off at a certain time and move on, but be authentic. And that is a major component in my entire life, is being authentic and transparent. And maybe to a point where you know, my campaign managers have to work on it, but it is part of who I am. And there are some things I'm not gonna hide. I'm going to be authentic in the things that excite me. I'm going to work hard in the things that I want to work hard on. And I don't care if it's not popular or if it's not fancy and I'm not sitting on some board. No, I'm going to be out there doing the things I do. I love seniors. I love children. I hardly don't make, they're more like a negative on my business, but I love investing in them. I don't think they should be stressed out. So there are things that I do. I go to those, you know, when we had our storm, I go to their communities and provide them food. I throw New Year's parties. We come in at 9 o'clock. Don't get it twisted, but they're still rocking it. I don't care if I run against people who have a resume building talking about homelessness. I can tell you about homelessness because I talk to seniors who are scared about where they're going to live. I can tell you about the lack of mental health resources because I talk with parents who have children that are self-medicating with illegal substances because they can't get in there. So I can tell you about the community. We as women, and I think of all colors because we look at things from a community point of view, simply the things we do are not valued. It's just like not valuing a teacher, but you have to be authentic in those things and just keep moving forward, because I will stand toe to toe with you any day of the week. If all you're going to tell me is you've been on some type of board, I'm going to ask you, who did you feed? Especially in a community that's red and they claim to be Christian. I'm Christian. I believe in separation of church and state, but I'm going to tell you, Jesus fed the hungry. He didn't just go to a meeting and talk about hunger. He healed the sick. He didn't just sign up and sit in some committee meeting and talk about what do we do about healthcare. He went out and committed actions of the things that helped people. Okay, so I'm always going to be authentic, and that's going to be it's going to be perceived however it's going to perceive. But I feel good about it, and I will challenge anyone toe to toe, and I will hang my hat in my campaign on that. I serve the people, and there's a difference between sitting and serving.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. I think that was just, yeah, well said. So to your point then, what does a reflective representation mean to you? And why is it important for a thriving democracy? And this is a question for everybody. Real easy, breezy question here.
You need to be able to see what you want to be. You need to see that there's someone there that represents your interests, that is from your community, that understands. If anything, the winter storms brought out some harsh realities for a lot of us.
Absolutely.
When you're looking at that board, and there was no one that looked like me, no one from my community. Some of them weren't even from this state. That was a harsh reality for us in a very down time.
Mm-hmm. And so how many boards are like that?
Well, and that's another thing. So Reflect This is an organization that they've come up with within the local area. They started going out to all of the cities, looking at city councils and looking at how many women are represented there. How many women are part of boards and commissions? They have a whole database that they've gotten with their interns that provides those listings of all of those city council positions, all of the different boards and commissions. They started with the County of Dallas first as a test group. So every city in the County of Dallas, you can go to their website and see a listing that they update weekly of all of those positions. Because a big challenge for women was learning the information. Well, how do you apply? What do you do? Where is it posted? And a lot of places it isn't posted. You have to bother someone else to give you the information so that they could collate it. So yeah, having that representation is so important. And just to throw this out, if you look up different peer-reviewed journals, women have better ethical leadership than men, hands down.
Yeah.
Several articles written about it. That's why those 5 countries are happy and their Maslow's hierarchy of needs are met, because we care about what matters to our families.
Yeah. So Barack changed it, and he stole it from a woman, Si se puede, and then he turned that into yes we can, and he basically changed and made us believe that the electorate can look like anyone, and then that just started the whole fear. because we knew what the electorate was. We knew who was setting the agenda and what they look like. And that's what we're moving forward to changing. And that is why it is invoking so much rage in amongst people, because when you can change the electorate, then you're changing the conversation and you're moving forward. So that's why we're going to be seeing all of these bills coming out of the state of Texas trying to shut down the electorate, figuring out ways to solve a problem that don't exist. You know, voter fraud is so negligible that it's negative. And you have a party that's supposed to be financially responsible. They're spending all this time and energy solving a problem that don't exist because they want to shut down the fact that, yes, we can, and we can change what that electorate looks like. And he made us believe, and we believed for that moment in time. And then Trump, that bred Trump, which is trying to shut all that down, but we believed it could look like anyone. And then that is when the power struggle started to come. But it's so embedded in everything in our society, because as a lawyer, I'm going to tell you, I don't believe a Black person can have a fair trial by a jury with someone that don't look like them on the jury pool. Okay. So it's so embedded in that process. When the guy that was murdered, I think it was Georgia, who was jogging, you know, it happens so often, unfortunately, it's just almost routine, was killed by the dad, the son, and then the other guy was filming it. Anybody, if you recall what his name, when they finally decided months later to charge them because of video, the lawyer for those guys filed a motion, and I'm sure it didn't go through, saying that he didn't think that the DA could be fair because he's Black. And I was like, so then are you admitting then that the countless of Black people who've had trials that had white DAs, prosecutors, juries, and judges was not fair? You know, well, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean it extends that far, but I think that the fact that we need representation is so prevalent through almost every aspect of it, not only our boards, our nonprofit boards, our jury systems, our grand jury, who gets indicted. When do we indict police officers? That's part of the grand jury process. And those people tend to all look alike.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
You got to be able to not work. You got to be able to be available all day on Thursday. Who can do that? You know?
Yes.
Nobody can do that. So those people, when you talk about, well, why didn't the police officer get indicted? Well, that's the grand jury. And they all look alike.
I don't think people realize that. Yeah.
You got to change. It's got to be permeated throughout of it. But, you know, I think that Obama really changed it. That scared everybody. And now we're seeing the backlash. And that's what bred Trump to come in, because we got carried away and let everybody walk in and be represented.
Yeah. It's really, it's unfortunate. And I think that it can't discourage other people from running for office. You know, there was definitely a time, right, during the insurrection. You know, I wasn't serving as commissioner at the time, but you know, I was kind of thinking, you know, when am I going to get involved again? You know, how am I going to get involved? And seeing some of that really scared me. Of course, it's a completely different level, right? But it scared me. It really did. And I thought, no, if I am scared, then that's the point, and they win, because that's exactly their goal. That is their goal, you know? And so we have to keep lifting other women up, and we have to keep encouraging them, you know, even if people, right, like Trump supporters and the like, are going to do whatever kind of crazy things that they're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen. But
what were you scared of? What scared you?
Just the fact, the fact that you could be serving and doing, you know, serving the people in a job like that and not be protected. So, you know, our commission was one of the only commissions that actually met in person during the pandemic. And we met during some of the protests that were going on. They were all peaceful in downtown Plano. So I was never worried or anything, of course. But, you know, I definitely think, you know, there could, of course, always come a time, depending on what the protest is about, that, you know, if we're meeting at that point in time, depending on who the security is, depending on what their motives are, you know, I would like to think that those people protecting me are protecting me, and they're not going to let people into a space like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought if it could happen at that level, at the highest level like that, then who's to say that it couldn't happen in my small city? It's not super small, but you know, it's not the White House. So
Yeah. Fear is a big controlling factor, you know, of everything. And we have to always walk in fear, even just to our car. But, you know, we learn to operate beyond fear. And it also could be also a factor of age. I don't know how old you are now. Are you in your 30s?
I'm in my early 30s.
Okay. And I'm not saying I'm not fearful, but I know during like the George Floyd period, my son and I were doing a whole lot of speaking, and then there were other people in our family who were like, "Oh, you better watch out," you know, and telling my son, he's 17. I don't know why they didn't say anything to me, but they were concerned that because he would do speaking things as well. And we were like, no, but one thing that, I mean, you do have to operate beyond it. And I'm not going to say I'm not fearful, but I'm kind of not. So you just have, you know, that's probably my faith system. But that is the controlling factor, is fear. I think is the bottom line, is how they keep you in check. And one thing about millennials that is great is that they do have this fearlessness that I can learn from and grab them, and they're willing to move forward and challenge. I think I'm at the best age possible. I'm the Gen X person, but I'm young enough to be able to appreciate that millennials are even less fearful, because, you know, they're willing to step in and challenge it. And I like that. And I want to embrace part of that in challenging the systems. But yeah, that's something that we have to talk about and think about and be prepared for, because it can be scary. And even if you feel strong, your family members may be fearful. You put them in a position where, or they're upset because you're attacked, and you're like, well, this comes from, but they get upset. Now that aspect bothers me when I see things happening to me that I can get beyond, but they take it so personal. But, you know, the fear, that's part of it. But you know what? It's, you know, I think that'd be a little bit crazy, but no, I'm not crazy. But I am going to say, you know, we all got phone numbers. It's Texas. Everybody's probably got a gun. No, I don't have a gun. I'm lying. I don't have a gun, but you know, I'm not, you have to move beyond your fear.
Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, never let your fear decide your fate.
Yeah. So
basically, right, you just, you know, even if you're fearful, that doesn't mean that it has to stop you.
No, because some things are just so wrong. I just can't not allow it. And I think about it and I say, you know what, if I grow older and I think back at this time period and I just don't do anything, for me personally, I just can't do it. And then I will feel bad that I just didn't do it. So you have to operate beyond your fear. And if something is not right, and it's your calling, it's not everybody's calling, but if it's your calling, then, you know, you do what you have to do. And for me, that's what causes me to operate beyond fear, is the fact that I don't want to grow old and think, well, you never stood up, you never tried, you know, you lost and you gave up and you quit. You know, I can't do it. And no matter, I have to move forward, because I have to, no matter what the outcome is, I have to do it. I have to move forward.
Yeah, living with those what ifs is really hard. So I'm going to ask one last question before I let everybody go for the night. And it's this. What does being an American mean to you? So whoever wants to go first.
For me,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, being an American is like having, you know, such a diverse family. You love each other, you drive each other crazy, but at the end of the day, you all stand together at the end. And it starts somewhere. And for me, when I think about my family, especially my mom's side, you know, they don't know a stranger. So my family is always so welcoming. And I think about, you know, being an American, especially when I travel. After COVID, I will get back out there. But when I travel and we see other Americans, it's like, brother, sister, hey, you know, like, hey, we're no longer strangers because we see each other. So I love being American. You know, this is where I was born. This is where several generations in my blood have been born. And this is a place I'll always call home. You know, even when people treat me like I'm not from America, I am American. They just identify me with the racial identifiers that they can see most prominent. But I love this country. I love this country. And it doesn't matter, you know, what party a person serves in. If you're American, you're still American. It doesn't stop that.
Yeah, absolutely. Delia or Lupe? What does being an American mean to you?
You know, America is a great experiment. You know, we're the only country where we're a young country. Believe, you know, we're just a young country, and we're the only ones that divides everybody. But, and I will say this, and it may sound weird, but I believe there's a great document. One of them is the Constitution. I believe that is a God-inspired document, as is the Bible, and we are constantly working towards making that more perfect. Certain people were able to establish what being an American is, and now we are changing that narrative. It means being brave. That's why this country was started, because we said, no, we're not paying your darn taxes and not getting what we want out of it. It means challenging the system. So when people say, I'm just conservative, I don't even know what that means. Our country was rooted on challenging the system in a war. So it is nothing more American than fighting for those values that was established in that great document by imperfect people. And it was written not to include everyone, but it is in of itself a great document. There's nothing more American than fighting to move towards the perfection of that document. And that requires us to fight, challenge, and oppose, because that is how we were born. That was the birth of that document. So being an American means being brave. It means fighting for what you know is right. And it means pushing us towards the perfection of that great document.
Fantastic answer. Great. And I know Lupe was not prepared to speak this evening, but I just want to give her the opportunity to jump in and answer this if she would like to.
Sure, of course. You'll have to, I don't know how much of my background you know, but please remember that I was a migrant worker, the 8th child of a family who only 2 were able to get educated, because at that time they did not accommodate migrant workers like they do now. So when you ask me, what's it like to be an American? It's like any family. There's a lot of good that comes with a lot of, I don't know what I don't want to mislead any, that comes with a lot of things that need to be worked on. And I have also had the privilege of, as a federal agent, living in other countries while I served as a federal agent. And you see how, in some cases, no matter how hard you work, you still can't get ahead. While here in the United States, we get educated, educate to elevate. We have got to continue providing decent educations to people that grew up in areas like many of us did. You know, I came from the poorest zip code in San Antonio, and it still is. I'm in my 70s, and it still is the poorest zip code in San Antonio. And so, but the fact that we educated ourselves, the fact that we went and did something about it, and then fought through our struggles. Nobody said it was going to be easy. And we have to continue fighting through our struggles. The neat thing is that now we have each other to fight with. You know, we have each segment of the community. One of the things I'll never forget is the first time I was elected sheriff, I went to the Hispanic community and they said, we got you elected. I went to the African-American community. They said, we got you elected. I went to the women's community. They said, we got you elected. I went to the LGBT community and they said, you get the picture. The truth is every single one of them was extremely important. And I could have never done anything without them. And so as we continue together, as we see how, you know, African-American, Asian women, Hispanic women, white women, all of us are continuing to struggle. It's neat that we can reach out toward each other. And no, it's never going to be perfect. And no, I'm never going to please everybody. If you do, there's something wrong with you, you know. But yes, we can work together and have the opportunity to advance. And I'm not done yet.
Awesome. Fantastic. What an awesome note to end on. I can't even find my words here, you guys. I just want to thank our panel tonight. This was just such a treat. Delia Parker Mims, excuse me, who's running for mayor of Louisville. I did post her information in the chat. Nancy Wallace with the Black Women's PAC. All of her information is in the chat as well. There's also a list of resources. So if you look, there are some that were given to me by the people who did the film, as well as some local resources to candidate training. I was also, excuse me, I forgot to mention, joined by Tracy Scott earlier, who will also be joining us next time for the second screening. And of course, I want to thank Lupe Valdez for joining us this evening. That was a wonderful surprise and treat for us all. So thank you very much for that. So I hope you guys can all join us next Friday for the second portion of this. It will be 45 minutes long, so just a few minutes longer. And we will be doing a Q&A afterwards with that as well. So again, thank you so very much for joining us this evening. And I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, good night.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much.
Hey, Lupe, could you drop your email in the chat?
I'm doing that right now. I'm putting that on the chat.
Great.
I just sent you an email that said, send me the deal, and I'm putting that's why I haven't left. I just put my email in there and I'm sending it to you, and then I'm leaving.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Hope to join you. And I want to see that. So before we see the second one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night. Make sure I've got this. Take a picture. I'm in good company, right? Go ahead and stop.